Old Hollywood looked so classy until you found out half those tuxedos were hiding segregationist opinions.
Is a lie.
Yeah, these folks could act, sing, and sometimes even shoot their own movies, but don't ask them how they felt about integration. They called it the golden age of Hollywood. But let's be real, it was only golden if you were white enough to match the Oscar. Everybody looked classy, tuxes, cigars, pearls, but half those tuxedos were hiding segregationist opinions in a dash of whites-only cologne. Hollywood wasn't a dream factory, it was a mirage factory. They sold fantasy like crack in a velvet box and everybody got addicted. The studio heads back then. 5 old white dudes who looked like they were born inside a tax deduction. They controlled everything from the lighting to the lies. They had rules, like no interracial romance on screen. Imagine writing a whole code of morality just to make sure Sidney Poitier couldn't get a date. If a black actor showed up, they weren't playing heroes. They were shining shoes, serving trays, or catching pies with their faces. And white folks laughed like it was the height of comedy. Meanwhile, the audience sat there sipping Coca-Cola saying, "Ah, the good old days." Yeah, good for who? For the people on the balcony or the ones cleaning it? They said, America loves a good show. But America also loves to pretend it's not racist while selling tickets to the proof. Hollywood made whiteness look like the main character and made everyone else an extra in their own story. They called those the simpler times. Yeah, simple because y'all deleted all the complicated people. They even convinced the world that white glamour was the global standard. Somewhere in the 1950s Africa, a kid's watching Clark Gable like, damn, maybe if I perm my soul, I'll make it. That's the power of propaganda. They painted prejudice in soft lighting and called it art. It wasn't cinema. It was segregation with better cinematography. But every illusion runs out of film. And when the lights come up, you see the wrinkles behind the glamour, the whiskey behind the smile, and the racism behind the Oscar. So let's meet the stars, the legends, the icons, and the folks who could act like angels on screen but talk like villains off it. These are the 10 Golden Age actors with racist views. Let's start with John Wayne, the man, the myth, the cowboy who thought empathy was for communists. He was the face of American masculinity, 6'4", square jaw, pistol in hand. But behind that rugged confidence was a man who looked at equality and said, "Partner, that ain't in my script." Yeah, he really said that, out loud, to Playboy, not a private diary, not a leaked memo. He said, "Print that." This man had so much audacity, it needed its own agent. And don't get me wrong, Hollywood loved it. Because John Wayne wasn't just a movie star, he was propaganda with a cowboy hat. He made racism look cinematic riding into towns, saving damsels, and shooting every savage in sight. You could practically hear the script whispering, "Manifest destiny, baby." And what's wild, people back then called him a real American hero. Like, bro, what did he save segregation? But here's the philosophy of it all. John Wayne wasn't an outlier. He was the template. Hollywood built its heroes off his kind of ignorance, tough, loud, white, and allergic to accountability. He didn't just play the cowboy, he was America. Brave on camera, scared to change off it. See, the cowboy fantasy was never about justice. It was about control. Riding into other people's land, calling it freedom. That's not bravery. That's colonization with better camera angles. So yeah, John Wayne is still a legend. But legends don't have to be heroes. Sometimes they're just history's best actors at pretending they were. Next up, another Hollywood darling who loved to dance around racism like it was choreography. Clark Gable. The gentleman who stayed silent. Clark Gable, the man who made charm look like a cigarette ad. Every time he said, "Frankly, my dear," half of America fainted. He was smooth, confident, had that little half smirk, the kind that says, "Yeah, I definitely break hearts and tax laws." But behind that debonair exterior, Clark wasn't exactly Captain Civil Rights either. See, Clark Gable was on top of the world during Gone with the Wind, a movie that basically said, slavery was bad, but look at this dress. Now, Gable did have some moments that made people go, okay, maybe he's not that bad. Like when he reportedly stood up for black extras on set. Good start, right? Except, after that, silence. Not a word about segregation, racism, nothing. It's like he saw injustice, gave it one retweet, then logged off forever. And that's the thing, Clark Gable was the nice racist era's poster boy. Didn't say slurs, didn't march for hate, but also didn't use his fame to stop the nonsense either. Sometimes the loudest racism isn't in words, it's in the silence between them. And Gable? He mastered that silence. The kind of silence that lets injustice breathe easy, because good men were too comfortable to speak. He could act like a hero on screen, but when the credits rolled, he let the real villains keep their roles. So yeah, Clark Gable was the king of Hollywood. But if the kingdom's rotten, what's a crown worth, really? Next up, the man who built the Magic Kingdom, but couldn't imagine a kingdom where everyone was welcome. Walt Disney, the man who built dreams, animated joy, and made a mouse more famous than Jesus. But behind that wholesome grin was a man who treated diversity like a deleted scene. See, Disney made the happiest place on earth as long as you were white, straight, and didn't question management. This dude would create a singing cricket to teach morality, but couldn't teach his studio not to be racist. Now, don't get it twisted, Disney was a genius, a visionary, a man who looked at a mouse and said, "You, my little rodent friend, are a billionaire in the making." But he was also the same man who produced Song of the South. You know, the movie's so racist, Disney pretends it never happened, like that one cousin you don't tag in family photos. That film straight up said slavery wasn't that bad. Like, sir, that's not a fairy tale. That's a hate crime with a soundtrack. And while the animators were drawing rabbits and bluebirds, Disney himself was cozying up to anti-Semitic groups and blacklisting anyone he thought leaned too left. Imagine preaching imagination then snitching on artists for thinking differently. Disney proved you can build a whole world of fantasy just to hide from your own reality. He sold innocence, but never questioned why he kept it segregated. He built castles, but only some people got to live in them. So yeah, Walt Disney changed entertainment forever. But let's not act like Mickey wasn't born in a racist studio with a "no colors allowed" sign just off camera. Next up is Cecil B. DeMille, the man who turned religion into box office gold. But his moral compass stuck somewhere between holy and hell no. He directed the 10 Commandments, but apparently skipped the one that said, "Love thy neighbor." Behind the epic sets and golden lighting, DeMille ran his productions like temples for white supremacy. He'd cast thousands but color-coded who could be seen and who had to stay in the shadows. Bro filmed miracles but wouldn't allow diversity on the crew. Philosophically, DeMille was Hollywood's pharaoh building monuments to God while enslaving the spirit of equality. And then there is Laurence Olivier, the black-faced Shakespeare, the actor's actor. The British dude who could turn Hamlet into Heartbreak and then turn Othello into a minstrel show. Yeah. He painted his face pitch black, put on an accent and said, "This is art." Bro looked like he fell into a chimney and came out speaking stereotypes. They said it was brilliant. Nah, that was brilliantly offensive. Olivier was so dedicated to the role, he refused to cast an actual black actor. He said it wouldn't be authentic. Let that sink in. He was proof that even the greatest thespians can confuse empathy for impersonation. Philosophically, he showed us how ego can disguise itself as craft. Because sometimes art ain't imitation, it's erasure with lighting. Number 6 on the list is James Cagney, the street thug who still drew the color line. Hollywood's original gangster. Quick fists, quicker lines, and slower empathy. He played street rats, rebels, underdogs, but only the white ones. Cagney was notorious for refusing integrated sets early in his career. Said he didn't want the distraction. Like diversity was a bad camera angle. Imagine being the tough guy of cinema but scared of inclusion. That's not gangster, that's fragile masculinity with choreography. Philosophically, Cagney proved something deep. You can rebel against the system and still enforce it. Rebellion without reflection, that's just tradition in disguise. 7. Audrey Hepburn, Beauty and the Bias. She was, of course, the goddess of grace. Breakfast at Tiffany's, elegance in motion, but not exactly motion in her morals. She stayed silent when Hollywood's color line was louder than applause. Spoke out against poverty, but not segregation. That's the thing about elegance, it can hide a lot of comfort. And while Mickey Rooney was out here doing yellowface in her movie, Audrey kept sipping her coffee like discrimination was a plot twist she didn't read. Audrey was beauty without rebellion. And in times of injustice, that's not beauty. That's neutrality with lipstick. Next is the Paradox King, Marlon Brando. He is the famous rebel, the thinker, the legend. He said all the right things and then did half of the wrong ones. Supported civil rights? Yes. Dated women of color? Sure. Still made bigoted remarks about Jews and Asians? Unfortunately, Brando was like a social justice mixtape, half fire, half nonsense. Philosophically, he embodied contradiction. He wanted the world to be fair as long as he stayed the main character. But here's his genius. He cracked open the illusion of perfection, showed that progress is messy. And sometimes, the people who say the truth still need to live it. And then there is Vivien Leigh at number 9. The Queen of the Confederacy. Vivien Leigh, the woman who made the Old South look sexy. Gone with the Wind made her a legend, but it also made slavery look like an aesthetic. She played Scarlett O'Hara so well, people forgot the movie was basically a Confederate fairy tale. She called the film a love letter to an era. Yeah, an era of whips, chains, and unpaid labor. Leigh said she didn't see the harm in how black characters were portrayed. Ma'am, that harm had screen time, dialogue, and an Oscar nomination. Philosophically, Vivien Leigh embodied the illusion of innocence. She wasn't hateful, just happily ignorant. And that's the scariest kind of racism, the kind that smiles while the system burns behind it. She proved that Hollywood didn't just entertain America's past, it romanticized it. And for every actor who stood up, 10 more sat pretty in denial. Last of the list is Shirley Temple, America's sweetheart with a sour backstory. Dimples so bright, even the Great Depression smiled back. But Hollywood didn't just make her a star. They made her a mascot for a segregated dream. She was America's sweetheart. But America was still picking and choosing who got to be loved. Remember Bill Bojangles Robinson? The black tap dancing legend who co-starred with her? Yeah, their on-screen friendship broke barriers. But off-screen, they couldn't even share the same hotel. Producers filmed them holding hands, then cut those scenes for Southern theaters. Because nothing scared white audiences like equality with rhythm. Shirley Temple was innocence weaponized. A child used to soften the image of a racist system. She didn't know any better, but Hollywood did. They used her smile to distract from the pain they refused to show. Her whole career was proof that even purity can be propaganda if the camera's held by the wrong hands. So, yeah, Shirley Temple wasn't evil. She was just evidence that even the cutest faces can cover up the ugliest truths. They called it the Golden Age, but the shine came from exclusion. The tuxedos, pearls, and red carpets were just veils for segregation. But truth? It always leaks through the cracks. And that's where we come in. We don't cancel history. We study it, laugh at it, and learn from it. Because you can't evolve if you're still worshiping people who couldn't even imagine you in the frame. The Golden Age wasn't pure. It was polished propaganda. And we're the editors of the sequel. If you laughed, learned, or lost a childhood idol tonight, smash that like button like it owes you reparations. Subscribe, cause OG philosophy ain't just education, it's entertainment with an attitude.